Hey guys, welcome to Herding Little Cows to the Glory of God. We have not done a lot of videos of me recently. I've been very tired as we've been getting near the end of pregnancy. But there were just some things I wanted to discuss today that have been on my mind. So we just started reading a book last night by Nancy Wilson about motherhood. Praise Her in the Gates might be the name. I don't know. I didn't bring it out here with me. But we've also just been having this conversation about motherhood and wives and husbands, just kind of all the home life stuff we've been talking about recently. And we just feel that the act of motherhood, the ministry of motherhood that God has given us, is not honored enough within our society, but specifically within our churches. We shouldn't expect our society to act like Christians when they want nothing to do with the Bible. But it's really hard when our churches, and this is churches as a whole, I'm not talking specifically about my church, just churches as a whole, do not regard motherhood in the stance that the Bible places it. So, I'm doing this video at 37, I'll be 37 weeks tomorrow, 37 weeks pregnant with baby number 9. And if I make funny faces during this video, baby is very active today and I just finished eating lunch, so he keeps kicking me. And I'm not doing this video because motherhood is easy and I just want everyone to just see how easy breezy motherhood is. Like I said, I'm uncomfortable right now because of this guy moving so much at the moment. I'm very happy to feel his kicks. It's very pleasant to know that baby's doing well in there. But also, I just came out. Mark was setting up the camera for me, and I had to go deal with a poopy diaper that kind of went everywhere and had to go deal with that. And it's nap time now, so as soon as this video is done, I'm going to lay down with the little ones to take a nap because I'm tired. So this isn't to say every minute of motherhood is the most enjoyable moment of your life, and if you don't find joy in every moment, you're doing something wrong. What I'm trying to say is that motherhood is a ministry that God has given women, and we too often try to walk away from that ministry. So, going back to when Mark and I first got married, I wanted children, but I didn't know how many children I wanted. I was planning to go to school to be a teacher because I wanted to work with kids. I didn't know how many of my own I wanted. We both come from smaller families. I was raised with one sister. My parents later adopted 2 children, but that was after I had moved out and married. And my husband was one of 3. So we weren't thinking like huge family or anything like that. My husband walked into the marriage with a son who was 6 at the time we got married and lived with us full time at that point. And he was very much a part of our lives. He didn't go see his mom except for an occasional visit of a couple hours. So, I immediately became a mom upon getting married. And we actually decided, because my husband was dealing with some health issues, that we shouldn't have children right away. By the way, if I sound out of breath, it's just end of pregnancy. I was dealing with someone's diaper with this big belly down on the floor. It made me a little out of breath. There's nothing wrong with me. So we had our first, so we got married thinking, okay, I'm suddenly a full-time mom because his son came into the picture right at our wedding to suddenly be with us full-time. We didn't know he was going to do that. And that was fine, but we thought because of health issues, we should wait to have kids. Well, about a month, 2 months after the wedding, we found out we were pregnant, and we were actually using birth control at the time. So we said, God, we don't want kids right now. Please keep those kids. Whatever kids you were planning to bless us with, we don't want those right now. And God gave us a blessing. She was a beautiful blessing. It was so amazing to be pregnant, to just know that God was growing a life in my womb, that he was, I could feel every little kick, I could feel every little squirm, and that he was building this relationship between me and my baby before a lot of people knew I was pregnant. I didn't get very big with her, and we actually had people at the church we were going to, they were like, "Oh, I heard you're pregnant. Is it true?" And I was due the following Sunday. So I was not very big. But I had this amazing relationship with the baby that was in my belly, and it caused our relationship, my husband and my relationship, to just grow so much stronger in that connection that we had. And also the raising of our older son at that time. I had been helping with the older son through our dating and engagement, with like babysitting and stuff. I would take him on Saturdays when Mark had to work, that type of thing. But to actually like grow as a family unit was just amazing. And we had told God, no, we don't want that. And we had some complications along the way with her. Nothing big, but I did have some preterm labor, which caused some limited activity and just made me more glad that God was sustaining us in all of that. So fast forward, she was delivered right before a month before our anniversary. And she was just a bundle of joy. It was amazing. But Mark was still having his health issues. We were still having issues with finances at this point because during the time that I was pregnant, Mark was put out of work because of his health issues. They hadn't given him a diagnosis till halfway through my pregnancy. And, we just feasibly couldn't see how God could make this work for us. So we, again, decided to use birth control. That's a whole nother video of the ins and outs of birth control. But most birth control is abortifacient. I think I'm saying that word right. Which means that one of the primary ways that it works is that it causes you to miscarry a conceived baby. Some of them also cause you to not release an egg. But if that happens, that you do release an egg and it gets fertilized, it is a cause to abort the baby. So we go forward in the story. We don't use birth control now. I'll get there. But at the time, we were using birth control that could have been causing miscarriages so early on that I didn't even know I was pregnant. And we needed to repent of that sin, because it's never right to take a life, whether you know you're taking the life or not. That baby hadn't done anything, and there was no reason for me to try to take that power of God's into my own hands. But we were on the birth control for 3 years, a couple different kinds during that time. And we realized that children were a blessing. We were reading in the Bible and we saw that every time God was working in someone's life, he would call the baby a blessing. Even if that baby ended up, like there was the story of Jacob and Esau, and Jacob I have loved, Esau I had hated. Even in the story of how he was going to determine history, the baby was always a blessing. And we saw that, it talks about a man and having his quiver full of children. It talks about boys being like plants grown up around your table, and girls like polished cornerstones. You see all of this blessing through these things. And in this video, I'm not trying to say that someone who's not having a child is being cursed, but God did use that as a cursing in the Old Testament. We do live in a fallen world where bodies do not work the way that God intended them to work in the first place. God is the one who always produces a life. Every time a baby is produced in the womb, whether chosen or unchosen pregnancy, like what they call a wanted or unwanted pregnancy, that baby is a blessing that God has created. There are women's bodies who do not work correctly because of the fall. And this video isn't to get into that, but it's to talk about the people who are choosing not to take God's blessings, not people who would love to have God's blessing and not have that. So we waited 3 years. God gave us a baby. We decided after 3 years, we were like, hey, let's try for a baby again. And God immediately blessed us with a baby. Like probably the night we talked about we should have another baby. God blessed us with a baby. And I ended up having a miscarriage. And so we looked at it and we said, okay, God, we said no babies. We don't think babies are a blessing at the start of the marriage. We don't think babies are a blessing, and we don't know how you're going to provide for this. So please don't give us a baby. And he gave us one that turned out to be an amazing blessing to our family. That would be Virginia. Then we said, okay, God, we're ready for another baby. He gave us that baby, and he took that baby away. And that is all in God's sovereignty. I'm not angry at God about that. That's how the story goes. God blessed us with a baby, and the baby was taken away a few short weeks later. And we just realized, God, you seem to be in charge of this. This isn't something that we get to pick and choose. And then looking through the Bible, it always said the babies were a blessing. And so who are we to say, God, we're ready for a blessing now? No, keep that blessing. If someone were to come to your door and say, I'd like to give you $1,000, would you say, I'm actually all set for right now. Like maybe later I'll come get the $1,000 from you. Or would you take the $1,000 willingly? I've heard it even talked about, sorry, he's kicking. Heard it even talked about with like a wagon full of gold. And well, that would be hard to store, and it would be hard to move around. And what would I do? You know, I'd have to like get to the bank to get it cashed out. No, you would just take the wagon full of gold if someone were to give that to you as a blessing. And so often in our church society, our church culture, we see babies as a burden. We see children as a curse. I know that we've been thrown out of churches. Not literally thrown out, but asked to leave because we had children that we wanted to be with us in a worship service. We have been looked at. If you think that our church culture likes children, walk into most churches being pregnant with number 9 and look at the stares you get. We are blessed to know some churches where children are very well accepted, and that doesn't happen. But it's few and far between. If you just went into the normal churches around here, we live in Maine. A lot of other churches too, families are just getting smaller, and it's looked at as like this crazy weird thing. Why would you do that? We've had Christians tell us that we shouldn't have more children because we're taking up too much space. We're overpopulating the earth. We're being selfish. There's all kinds of reasons people tell us. But God has blessed us with these children. God has blessed us with the resources to take care of these children. And he knows what he's doing. Our church culture tends to not look at the biblical way that children are talked about. So that's all to go with the blessing part of children. That children are a blessing to their families, no matter the circumstances. I know families who have dealt with a sick child that maybe only lived for a short time or lived for a longer time and dealt with some severe illness, and that child was still a blessing. Now baby has given me hiccups, so sorry about that. But God has always says that children are a blessing. And when you get to your end of your life, I've never heard somebody say, I'm sure somebody has, but I've never heard somebody say, I wish I had less children so that I could go do this thing or could have done this thing. It's always, in our church culture, very much, it's I'm at the end of my life and I'm lonely. I had 2 children, but I let the state raise them through school, or I let them get in with the wrong crowd. I'm not saying a parent can save their child. That's not what I'm saying. But I didn't do my due diligence, and I'll talk about this in a minute, to raise my child in the fear and admonition of the Lord. And now my child doesn't see their elder, their parents, their grandparents, whatever, as the blessing that they are. Because the Bible talks a lot about the wisdom of the older members of our generation and how we should respect our parents and how we should be taking care of the widows within our churches. It talks about just seeing the wisdom of the older people, I thought I saw an animal outside, an older man or woman in the church is supposed to be mentoring the younger men and women in the church. And we have neglected that part of our church culture also. And so this kind of all ties together. So anyway, I'll go quickly through our birth stories. not the birth stories, but like the rest of the children. So we lost the baby to miscarriage. The one right after Virginia. We had named that baby Esther. Just within a few months, we got pregnant with Naomi. This was when we had decided, yes, we're just going to leave this open to the Lord. So we got pregnant with Naomi. Great pregnancy, great birth. Everything went well. When she was about a year old, a little over a year old, we conceived again, had a great pregnancy, and lost that baby to stillbirth. That was our son Joshua. He was born at 37 weeks and was just perfect in every way. I had an infection that wasn't treated by the doctors, and that happened. But the doctors, in all their wisdom, told me that because of the infection, I would probably never have children again. Well, 8 weeks later, we conceived Samuel, who was a blessing. His name means to be prayed for. Like Samuel in the Bible, his mom Hannah prayed for him for a long time, and we really prayed for Samuel. I know it was only 8 weeks, but being told we'd never have children again, we were longing for another child. So told never have children again. So since then, we had a lot more children. So we had Samuel. 2 years later, we had Josiah, who was is perfect in every way, but at 10 months old, we found out he had cerebral palsy and epilepsy. That's another story. You can look up his story online, like on our page. After Josiah, we had another early miscarriage. We named that baby Poppy. Right after Poppy, just within a few months, I got pregnant with Abigail. Fine birth. After that, about 2 years later, we had Uriah. About 2 years after that, we had Malachi. And Malachi will be just about 2 when this guy's born. This is baby Gideon. So there's our birth stories, our pregnancy story. But then to go forward, not just the blessing of children, the actual having the child, bearing the child. We go into what is expected of mothers. So in the Bible, we are told that mothers there's lots of references to mothers nursing their children, nurturing their children, being the ones to take care of their children, the toddler at their breast, all of those things are said. And I just saw my mom walk down the driveway. I wanted to make sure she wasn't coming in. So just those caring, nurturing things that a mom's supposed to do. Mom carries this baby for 9 months, 10 months, however you want to count those days, 40 weeks in her belly, and has this super unique experience with this child that none of the other family members can have. The other family members here are loving touching Gideon and getting to just enjoy him from the outside. But I have this special connection to him right now that nobody else has. And that in itself is a huge blessing and a huge refinement process from God to make me more into the image of Christ. There's so many things that I can't be selfish about right now because this baby takes what this baby wants. If he's hungry, I don't feel him say, "Oh, I'm hungry," but he takes the food that he needs from my system, and I need to make sure that I'm eating enough. I need to make sure I'm drinking enough. I need to make sure I'm sleeping. I can't just say, you know what, I'd really like to stay up really late tonight to watch this movie because my body needs the sleep for this baby. And there's so many things in just the pregnancy process that sanctify us that a man doesn't understand, or someone who chooses to stop the blessing of children doesn't understand. It's a time to start chiseling away at that selfishness we have. And every baby does that. I'm on baby number 9 and I'm still feeling that same way. That there are times that, I just realize that I'm wanting something that's not expected, that's not in my future right now, because this is the place that God has put me. There are times that I'd like to go out and do more with the kids, like, oh, it'd be really nice if we could go on a hike, but mommy doesn't feel up to it. And just having to say, I'm going to be content in the place that God has put me right now. So that happens in the actual pregnancy. You then go on to the actual labor and delivery part, where labor is so difficult. It is such a physically, mentally, emotionally challenging time, even just getting close to labor, because I'm now 3 weeks away from having a baby, and there's always the I'm nervous, not nervous because I don't think I can do it, but just nervous about like, when is it going to happen? How's it going to happen? Just needing to wait on God for his perfect timing and knowing that he has all of this arranged, even if I don't understand it. But then the actual delivery of the baby, where you have to put all of your emotions and all of your mental power into bringing this baby into the world in such an amazing way that God has provided for us. I don't want to get too graphic in this whole birth thing, but that's something that our husbands can't do either. That's something people see the curse that's given to Adam and Eve in the beginning, and they look at Eve's curse of childbirth and pain in childbirth, and they think how awful that is, that, you know, women have to go through this pain in childbirth and everything. But then women gladly try to take over the work aspect that's been given to the men, that they'll toil with by the sweat of their brow, I think it says. Women will gladly try to take over that part and be the provider and protector of their house, but will try to forego the role that women have been given. The actual like delivery of the child, the labor and the delivery of the child, is such a spiritual thing. I can't explain it, but you rely on everything you're worth for God to get you through it. And how it talks about in the book of Revelation and some other places where it talks about like labor pains of the woman. The closer the labor pains get together, the more anticipation you have for that baby that's coming, that hope that you know is coming. So instead of feeling dreary and, I mean, you're tired and exhausted while this is all going on, but instead of feeling hopeless and dreary, there's that amazing, this thing that has been promised for so long, this thing I've been waiting for 9 months is finally here. And I think as Christians, we focus too much on the labor pains that are described and the dreariness that that's all going to happen, instead of focusing on the return of Christ and his ruling and reigning. And we can get too stuck in labor on focusing on those labor pains and focusing on how hard and challenging this moment is, instead of focusing on that baby that God is bringing into the world. And we get to be part of that, and men never get to, I mean, they experience it alongside of us, but they can't experience it in the way that we do. And there's no way I can explain that to a man. So, and I'm pregnant, so I get all weepy all the time. So we get to do all of that part that God has made this amazing plan for how people are to go into the world and populate the earth. And a lot of women, even in the church, try to say, no, God, I don't want that. I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to be part of that hard work of bringing future disciples, future members of the church into the world. So we get past labor and delivery and you have that baby, and that's another time when God uses to sanctify us and just cut away again at those selfish edges, because as a mom, when baby needs to eat, you need to feed them. This isn't a bash against bottle feeding and stuff. I have friends who can't breastfeed, and so this is not against that at all. But our bodies are made to naturally breastfeed, like I said before, of the conceiving a baby. God has made this wonderful way for breastfeeding to happen, because we live in a fallen world. Some women's bodies do not work great, but the average woman's body does work great, and they can breastfeed their baby. And just the amount of time and attention that we have to spend with this little one that God has put under our wing reminds us of leading somebody to the Lord. We don't actually bring anyone to Christ, But God puts people in our lives for us to share the gospel with, for us to take under our wing and mentor, and to show them the truths of the gospel. And that takes time and attention, just like breastfeeding takes time and attention. And it's not something that you can easily just hand off. It's something that God wants us to work towards these efforts. And breastfeeding is good in so many ways. I've done videos on breastfeeding and how it's good just for the emotional bonds with mom and baby. And it's good for baby's health and all of those things. But the actual aspect of connection with your baby, where you are the one doing the providing for them, you, like, in the same way that God cares for us and provides for our every need, mom is doing that for her baby. There's the sleepless nights, there's the endless diaper changes, there's all that stuff that goes with it. But God has called us. We're the only person who can do that. And I'm not saying that God can't provide. I know somebody who just a few years ago passed away after having a baby, and her church family stepped up and was able to help take care of her baby and make sure the baby had breast milk and all of that stuff. But the way that God has made it to happen naturally is for mom to do those provisions. And it just shows us how needy we really are in front of God. To see that baby who's helpless and will cry out and can't even tell you what they need. I've done that to God many times. God, I don't even know what I need right now, but I need you. I need you, and I don't know what that's for. And just that realization of I'm not saying we're God, don't take that, but it's a picture of how helpless we are and how God knows so much more intimately about us than we could ever understand. Just like that baby who just knows that mom is the person they need. Don't know why, just knows that mom's the person they need. So motherhood is amazing. I've only gotten through having a newborn in the house, and so you go up to toddlerhood and all the different things you have to teach for boundaries with toddlers. They just want to touch things, and you have to tell them, no, you can't touch the electric outlet. No, you can't touch the hot stove. No, you can't climb on that thing because you're going to fall off. And all the things that God has to teach us in his rules to help us to be able to just be in better communion with him, relationship with him, teaching us all that the Bible has to say. Like, I really look at the toddler years as, this is how the world works, and I'm going to help you learn these boundaries. And that's what the Bible does for us, is it helps us learn what boundaries, because everything that is good, God is everything that's good, and we need to learn what is good and learn to understand what God says is good. You have then the school years, and then getting your child off into the world and all of that. But just how much God uses motherhood to sanctify the mother, and how that's not respected within our culture. It's not seen as a thing to be in prayer over for the families in the church. And I'm not trying to disregard fathers in this point. This video was meant to do with mothers. But moms go through a lot to carry a baby for 9 months, and then go through a lot for the birth and delivery and the recovery time. And it's definitely not seen as a big deal by most people in the church, because a lot of people have disregarded it, or just had 1 or 2 children, and don't come up alongside the mother to say, yes, I know this is hard. How can I help? Yes, I know this is a lot of work. What can I do? The mothers in the church are doing more ministry every day than even the full-time ministers in the church, the pastors or the full-time evangelists or the full-time whatever workers you have in your church. The mothers in the church are doing more of that work every single day. Most fathers, we're in a unique situation because Mark does not go off to work because of his disability. But even in that, I still do most of the child training around here. And again, this is not to let fathers off. Fathers are to be training their children in the fear and admonition of the Lord. They are to be teaching their kids Bible and all of that. But what I'm saying is mothers are the ones who are around doing that the large majority of the time. And we don't have a chance to just walk away. We shouldn't be looking for a chance to just walk away, because the Bible talks about us as Christians. Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Go and teach them all these things that I've taught you. God has put little disciples in our house. Right now, like I said, this was my 9th pregnancy. Our oldest one is out of the house. So currently we have 7 children in the house and this one right here in the womb. I have 7 disciples living with me at all times, meaning they're seeing what I'm doing at all times, and they're seeing how I am glorifying God or not glorifying God as I walk through each step, whether that be pregnancy, whether that be slamming my thumb with a hammer, whether that be through the good times of finding out something exciting, whether that be through the bad times of finding out someone died or finding out, some major catastrophe. They're watching me and they're seeing how I'm living life. Gonna get weepy again. There's also, I have the opportunity and the command from God that I'm supposed to be teaching them through every experience. And that's actually opening God's word. That's actually teaching them Bible verses, teaching them hymns and truths of the faith. It's not just hoping that they catch on that I pick up my Bible sometimes. It's actually doing the hard work of getting the Bible open every day for your family and to make sure that they're learning those truths. We would say that someone is not a good discipler if they get together with their, disciple once a week and have coffee and never talk about God. Or they talk about God in just some God created the earth. We would say that that person is not actually doing the work. If the pastor got up on Sundays and his message was all about, your best life now, and not actually talking about God and what we need to be doing in front of this holy God and pointing out how low we are and how high God is and how amazing that all is, we would say that they're failing. Yet that's the job that moms have been commanded to do, is to be teaching and training their children every day. And the church disregards that work as, well, that lady's throwing her life away because she's not getting a career. That lady's throwing her life away because she's just staying home and changing the diapers. She's just a housewife. All of those things have been said to me. I was going to go off and be a teacher, and people thought that was great and amazing. And when I said, no, I'm actually going to stay home and teach my kids at home, not send them to public school where they're going to be taught the ways of the world. Instead, I'm going to keep them home and teach them about God. I was told that I was throwing my life away. And there's no greater mission I could be doing than staying home and teaching my kids who God is. And that our church very much, church in general, very much looks at worldly accomplishments and individual accomplishments and doesn't look at the spiritual growth of the families in the church or the spiritual work that parents are putting into their children. We are much more likely to congratulate someone because their child got into Harvard than to congratulate that parent for being diligent of teaching their children God's word through the 18 years of their life in their home. Not that I'm kicking my kids out at 18, just using that 18 example. We're much more likely to congratulate the kid who made All-Star on the soccer team than the child who memorized, a chapter of the Bible. We're much more likely to congratulate the child who did well in the piano recital than the child who, actually stopped and prayed for somebody. And we really need to be looking at the spiritual growth of the homes within our church to see where our church is headed, because where the families are spiritually lacking, the church can never thrive. And a big part of that is moms. And so I'm saying all of this to hopefully be an encouragement to moms out there who might be struggling today, thinking, did I do enough? Am I doing all the things I need to for my kids? I feel like I'm failing in homeschooling, or I feel like I'm failing in giving healthy meals. I feel like I'm failing in not doing enough for this child in whatever. And those are all things like we should be striving to teach our children academic things. Like God made the world around us, and we want to be teaching them those things. And we should be striving to feed our families healthy because that's good for our bodies. I'm not saying we shouldn't strive for those things, but if you feel like you're failing, just look to see what you've been doing to advance your family in God's kingdom, because that's the most important thing. So, all of that to say, thank you for joining us on Herding Little Cows to the glory of God. Sorry I'm so emotional today, but I hope this was an encouragement. Thanks.